The result I wanted, but truthfully, the result I wanted was to see if I could still do it. But I didn't quit, never give up, never retreat, never surrender, fight to the end, go out on your shield. Time is the fire in which we all burn. But I gave it my absolute all, and I have nothing but respect for Chase. I have no excuses. He was the man who won. He deserves this victory. Truthfully, completely, and honestly, I'm actually very proud of him. And I'm glad to know that Misfits have a true champion, because he is a true champion. So I'm not disappointed in myself. I don't operate from that frame. The only way I would be disappointed in myself is if I was too scared to fight.
It's been a few days since the Tate fight, and now that the online chaos has cooled down, we can finally break this down without everyone yelling over each other. Looking back at it clearly, this wasn't some controversial decision, it wasn't bad luck, and it definitely wasn't razor close. If anything, it felt like a perfect example of someone picking a matchup that looked easy on paper, and then watching it fall apart in real time. For years, Andrew Tate has built a huge part of his image around being a dangerous, hyper-disciplined fighter. The brand is built on control, dominance, and the idea that he understands combat and competition better than most. Scroll through social media, and you'll see the pad work, the old kickboxing highlights, the clips reminding everyone he once held real titles. He constantly talks about staying in elite shape, staying sharp, staying ready. So going into this fight, on the surface, there wasn't much reason to doubt him. He has legitimate experience. He's stepped into real rings, he's earned real wins. The expectation felt simple. Even if he wasn't flawless, he should be more than prepared to handle the opponent in front of him. But from the opening rounds, that assumption started to crumble. Something just felt off. Tate didn't look sharp, he didn't look loose. Most importantly, he didn't look comfortable with the pace and style of the fight that was unfolding. The timing wasn't there. The reaction seemed delayed. The composure he usually projects online didn't translate the same way under pressure. And once that first layer of confidence cracked, the whole narrative began to shift fast.
And everyone said, Andrew, you're 40 years old. You just got out of jail. You've been through so much. You have so many problems and so much going on. Why would you do this? Why would you risk it all? Why would you get in there? And I felt a tinge of fear for the first time in my life. And that's when I knew I had to fight. Because the second I felt afraid, I knew I had to fight. I can't live doubting myself. Seeds of doubt grow into forests of inaction. I don't operate that way. If Chase and I had to fight again tomorrow, I'd go tomorrow still with 100% belief in myself, even though I know he just beat me. That's who I am. The second I knew that, I was worried about it, I knew I had to do it. And I'm not afraid to lose. I'm afraid to not try.
This wasn't about one bad exchange or one unlucky moment. It was about rhythm, control, and adaptability. The opponent dictated the tempo early, and instead of adjusting smoothly, Tate looked like he was trying to force his usual formula onto a situation that clearly required something different. That's where the gap became obvious. Experience on paper doesn't always equal dominance in the moment, especially when the energy in the ring feels unfamiliar. The biggest shock wasn't just that he struggled, it was how visible the discomfort was. The brand says, calm under fire. The performance suggested tension, and once viewers picked up on that contrast, the entire tone of the fight changed. What was supposed to reinforce his aura started raising questions about it instead. As the rounds dragged on, it became impossible to ignore what everyone was seeing. He looked tired, he looked slow, and at times, he struggled with basic boxing fundamentals that shouldn't be an issue for someone with his resume. That's what really threw people off. This wasn't some random guy walking in unprepared. Tate has money, resources, connections, and access to experienced coaches who've lived and breathed combat sports for years. With that kind of setup, you expect a camp that covers every angle and leaves zero gaps. Instead, what showed up in the ring looked like a fighter who trained for one very specific version of the fight and froze when reality didn't match the script.
Well, yeah, man. I knew you would be hard to notice. If I'm gonna come back, I need to fight someone.
Hey, real quick, look at, hey boys, right here behind us. I can't believe. You get a selfie real quick behind all the fighters, everybody. Right here.
Oh, Tristan came fight. You get home over there.
Oh, hi. Good to see you.
Right here, Emiliano. I'll fight my pants. You still got the light? Yeah. Right here. Where? Yeah, right here. My brother.
Let's give you a handshake. Good to see you.
Good member. Son, how you doing?
Good to see you. I'll wait for you.
Thank you.
I need you in court to tell the judge. Why are you gay? I'm in court and the judge is talking shit. I'm like, you weren't even there. What the fuck do you know?
Tell the guy he's gay.
Yeah, exactly. Why are you gay? Let me go home.
When you go back and watch the camp footage that was posted on Rumble, it starts to click. The sessions looked intense. Sure, heavy breathing, hard pad work, loud motivation. But intensity alone doesn't guarantee quality. You can sweat all day and still miss the real problem. A lot of the sparring we saw was against smaller guys, kickboxers, or close training partners he's probably worked with for years. And that's a serious issue when you're preparing for a heavyweight boxing match. Familiarity can be comfortable, and comfort is dangerous in fight prep. When you're sparring people who know your rhythm, who respect your status, or who don't push you into messy, uncomfortable situations, you can trick yourself into thinking you're sharper than you actually are. It builds confidence, but not necessarily adaptability. You don't learn how to adjust when things go wrong. You don't learn how to survive chaos when someone leans on you, smothers you, and forces you to work when your lungs are burning. You don't get used to a different pace, a different style, a different kind of pressure. And once the real fight starts moving in a direction you didn't rehearse, that's when panic creeps in. The most credible sparring partner shown publicly was Benjamin Adegbuyi, a legitimate glory kickboxing champion.
I want to get spiritual about all of this. You have to understand that there are forces larger than us people. And I said that the answer was already written. Why did I get tired? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is that I was not supposed to win. Why was I not supposed to win? Is the world a better place now that I've lost? Maybe the win means more to Chase than it would have meant to me. Maybe Chase couldn't handle the loss. Maybe God decided, you know what, Chase has been through enough with mocking and things on the internet. Chase doesn't need the loss right now. Andrew can handle the loss better. Maybe God decided. Maybe if I won, we would have went out and celebrated that night, and Tristan would have smoked a bunch of cigars, and maybe he would have died 1 minute earlier.
That's real talent, no doubt. But even then, he's primarily a kickboxer, not a pure boxer. Different stance, different rhythm, different habits, and we don't actually know how often they sparred or how intense those rounds really were. Highlight clips don't show the full picture. They don't show the ugly rounds, the exhausted rounds, the rounds where things fall apart. So that brings up a huge question. Where were the real tests? Where were the big, relentless heavyweights whose only job was to lean on Tate, pressure him against the ropes, and make him fight tired? Where were the rounds designed specifically to drain his gas tank and force mid-fight adjustments? Where was the uncomfortable work that exposes weaknesses before the lights come on? Because here's the hard truth. If Tate had been consistently sparring opponents who truly mirrored his challenger's size, pressure, and boxing style, someone in that camp would have spotted the conditioning issues early. Someone would have noticed the drop in pace. Someone would have seen the cracks forming. And if they did notice, the real question becomes whether it was fixed or ignored. Fatigue doesn't just appear out of nowhere on fight night. It shows up in sparring first. It shows up in those long grinding rounds when the cameras aren't rolling. So either he wasn't being pushed hard enough behind closed doors, or the people around him weren't fully honest. And that's where camp dynamics really matter. Loyalty sounds good, but loyalty without truth can cost you. Tate has a close bond with his coach, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you've got experienced voices in the room, someone has to be willing to say, this isn't enough. Someone has to say, we need uglier rounds, harder pressure, more chaos. Instead, it felt like everyone leaned on the belief that his past accomplishments would carry him through. That belief laid the groundwork for everything that followed. Now let's talk about what actually happened in the ring, because that's where the real answers live. Early on, Tate didn't look awful. He was composed, moving, trying to find his rhythm. But almost immediately, Chase made it clear what kind of night this was going to be. He closed distance. He leaned in. He clinched and made Tate carry his weight. And that's not dirty. That's not unfair. That's heavyweight boxing. Bigger fighters are supposed to sap your legs, drain your gas tank, and make every second uncomfortable. If you don't have solutions for that, you're going to sink. And that's exactly what unfolded. As the rounds went deeper, Tate's movement slowed. His hands dropped lower. His breathing became obvious. Once the fatigue set in, something even more concerning happened. Nothing changed. No tactical reset, no real adjustment, no shift in tempo. He fought tired the same way he fought fresh. That's a major red flag. Skilled boxers don't just rely on plan A. They develop survival instincts. They know how to stall, how to disrupt rhythm, how to control clinches on their own terms, how to buy themselves time when the engine starts fading. Tate didn't show those layers once his gas tank dipped. The fight played out exactly how Chase wanted it to. And that's why the argument about who looked more polished on paper doesn't hold up. Boxing isn't scored on highlight clips or pad work videos. It's judged on what survives when things get messy. The better boxer is the one who adapts under pressure, not the one who looks sharp when everything is clean and controlled.
Happened on Saturday when Andrew Tate lost to Chase Damore. He should have never taken this fight. If there was any sort of doubt about him winning, he should have never taken this fight. And now he's going online and he's doing the babyface thing of like, you have to live, and I'd rather try and fail. No, that's not who you are. Your persona has nothing to do with failure. Your persona is about winning. Your persona is about achieving wealth and success. Your persona is not about trying, and hey, if you don't succeed, you gave it the old college try. That is the antithesis of everything that you have spewed over the past 5 or so years. So miss me with the like, I'm proud of myself for trying, and I went in there against the champion who's really good. No, you didn't. You went in there and you looked awful and you failed. And so just be honest about it.
What made this outcome harder to defend is how predictable the challenges were. Everyone knew Chase was bigger. Everyone knew he'd lean and apply steady pressure. Everyone knew the pace would get uncomfortable. Yet Tate seemed prepared for a controlled exchange early, not a long grind. That's not about age. That's not about bad luck. That's preparation. A lot of people keep pointing to Tate's age, but that explanation feels too easy. Plenty of fighters compete effectively well into their late 30s and even early 40s when their preparation matches the reality of the matchup. This wasn't about a sudden physical decline. It was about not building an engine designed for the worst-case scenario. You don't train for when everything goes perfectly. You train for when the fight turns against you. Once this bout crossed that line, the cracks showed fast. Chase, on the other hand, did exactly what he needed to do. He stayed disciplined. He stuck to the plan. He didn't rush for a dramatic finish. He didn't chase flashy moments. He simply made Tate uncomfortable long enough for the conditioning gap to become obvious. By the later rounds, the direction of the fight felt inevitable. Afterward, Tate initially handled the loss in a composed way. He didn't explode. He didn't instantly fire off excuses. He accepted the decision. But as the days passed, the tone shifted. Instead of keeping it simple, saying I wasn't ready for that style, the explanations grew longer and more philosophical. There was talk about mindset, spirit, and deeper lessons. Reflection is fine. Growth is important. But when the explanation stretches into extended monologues, it can signal a struggle to fully accept what happened. If you truly understand why you lost, you don't need to circle it for 40 minutes. One point he kept repeating was that he got tired but didn't know why. That line stands out. In boxing, fatigue is rarely random. It comes from pressure, pace, inefficient movement, or conditioning gaps. The fight itself was answering that question in real time. The leaning, the clinch work, the constant physical demand. Those factors add up. Ignoring that reality doesn't change it. There was also an effort to minimize Chase's impact while still mentioning the clinch-heavy approach. But again, that's the sport. Heavyweights don't always fight beautifully. They fight effectively. If someone makes you carry weight, forces you backward, and controls the tempo, that's strategy, not a loophole. The most concerning part of the post-fight response wasn't the defeat. Losses happen. It was the hesitation to directly address where preparation may have fallen short. When the focus shifts toward abstract ideas instead of concrete adjustments, that's risky. Because if the real takeaway isn't that the camp needed tougher sparring, stronger conditioning drills, and more realistic simulations, then nothing changes. Reputation alone doesn't win fights. Past titles don't refill your gas tank mid-round. This should serve as a wake-up call, not just for Tate, but for anyone thinking experience by itself is enough. The ring doesn't care about branding. It only rewards preparation that matches the challenge in front of you. Combat sports don't care about who you used to be. They don't care about viral clips, past belts, or how dominant you looked years ago. They care about one thing: what you can do right now, under pressure, when the lights are on and the rounds get hard. That's the brutal truth of this game. The ring doesn't reward reputation. It rewards preparation, conditioning, adaptability, and grit.
And I don't need to know exactly what it is. If God decides that for some reason he's going to instantly gas me when I was in perfect physical condition so that I lose, then I have to accept God's decision. And I'll take the punches in the face like a man. And I'm not going to bitch, I'm not going to complain, and I'm not going to cry. I'm going to take it. God decided on that day that that's what has to happen to me, so I did it. If you're going to go through life without understanding that there's a grander plan, a plan that's bigger than just you and your ego. The plan is bigger than just us and our egos, guys. The plan is bigger than just, I want to win. So I have to have what I want like a spoiled child, and what God decides and what's good for the universe and what's good for people to learn from and what's good for the general karmic retributions of the planet. Fuck all that. I want to win so that...
And on this night, that difference showed clearly. Tate still has real options in front of him. This loss doesn't erase his history in kickboxing. It doesn't erase the discipline he talks about or the work he's put in over the years. But it does force a crossroads moment. He can take a hard, honest look at what happened, rebuild his camp structure, bring in new voices who challenge him instead of agreeing with him, and seriously overhaul the conditioning approach. He can seek out sparring that mirrors worst-case scenarios instead of comfortable rounds. He can design camps that focus less on intensity for the cameras and more on ugly, exhausting realism. If he truly wants another fight, that path is there. The other option is just as valid. He can step away and accept that this chapter has reached its natural end. Combat sports are unforgiving. They demand everything. There's no shame in deciding that the cost, physically and mentally, isn't worth it anymore. Plenty of respected fighters have walked away when they realized the preparation required no longer aligns with where they are in life. That decision can be strong, not weak. What would be a mistake is pretending this fight didn't expose real issues, because it did. The conditioning drop was visible. The lack of mid-fight adjustments was visible. The inability to shift tactics when the pressure mounted was visible. These aren't personal attacks. They're observations from what played out round by round. When the pace intensified and the clinch work drained energy, there wasn't a clear secondary strategy. There wasn't a visible reset. That matters. At the end of the day, the fight itself doesn't lie. It doesn't bend to narratives. Chase showed up with a clear plan and the engine to execute it for multiple rounds. He leaned, he pressured, he stayed disciplined, and he made the fight uncomfortable. That's not flashy, but it's effective. Tate, meanwhile, didn't match that level of physical preparedness in the later stages, and no amount of mindset talk, philosophy, or long reflections can change the scoreboard or the visual evidence. This doesn't mean Tate lacks skill. It means the preparation didn't fully align with the challenge. There's a big difference. Skill can be real. Experience can be real, but if the gas tank isn't built for the specific type of pressure you're about to face, the gap shows fast, especially at heavyweight, where every clinch, every lean, every exchange drains more than it looks like on screen. That's why so many analysts keep circling back to camp structure. Was the sparring realistic enough? Were the rounds tough enough? Did anyone in that room simulate the exact grind Chase was going to bring? It's easy to build confidence when you're surrounded by familiar training partners. It's harder to grow when you're constantly forced into uncomfortable territory. The best camps are the ones that expose weaknesses before the opponent does. That didn't seem to happen here, and that's why people are debating whether this was mainly a conditioning issue, a strategic issue, or a culture issue inside the camp itself. There's also the mental side. When fatigue sets in and your body starts slowing down, that's when composure and ring IQ are supposed to take over. Buying time, tying up on your own terms, controlling the tempo, changing angles, slowing the pace strategically. Those tools weren't clearly on display once the energy dipped. That's another layer of preparation. It's not just about lungs and legs. It's about rehearsing adversity so many times in the gym that nothing feels shocking on fight night. None of this is about disrespect. It's about standards. When someone builds an image around discipline, dominance, and elite readiness, the expectations rise naturally. That's part of the package. And when the performance doesn't match the branding, people will question it. That's normal in competitive sports. It's not personal. It's performance-based. Now, the real question is, what happens next? Does Tate double down and prove this was a wake-up call that pushes him to evolve? Does he restructure everything and return sharper, better conditioned, and more adaptable? Or does he recognize that the grind required to close those gaps isn't something he wants anymore? Both outcomes are possible, but the worst route would be brushing it off as random or mysterious. Because fatigue isn't random. Preparation gaps aren't mysterious. They're built slowly, over weeks of training decisions. Fixable, yes, but only if acknowledged directly. Growth in combat sports starts with brutal honesty. So I want to hear from you. Was this primarily a conditioning failure that showed up under sustained pressure? Was it a camp dynamic issue where not enough uncomfortable work was done? Or was it a combination of overconfidence and strategic blind spots stacking up at the wrong time? Did Tate underestimate the grind he was stepping into, or overestimate where his current level truly stands in a competitive boxing setting? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read through them, and the different perspectives always add depth to the conversation. If you appreciated this breakdown and want more clear, no-noise analysis of fight nights and big matchups, make sure to like the video, subscribe for future content, and share this with someone who follows combat sports. I'll catch you in the next one.